All right. Good morning, everybody, or good evening. My name is Jessee with ROI Safety Services. And today we are going to interview Amanda Deering, who is a workman's comp attorney. I'm not quite sure if that's a good description of your job title. Maybe more your what you're doing. And what we would like to do, our purpose today is to give some insight on what business owners and managers can do to prevent attorneys from getting called. And what we want to do is take it from there and keep it real simple. So we have a few questions for you today, Amanda, and based on our last conversation, you had a ton of information that was really, really good. And I think you sharing that would be really beneficial for business owners and managers and others interested in what you do. So if you want to start off with giving us a little bit of a background, what brought you to this industry, and kind of just a little bit of a background of where you're located, just a quick bio if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. First, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to kind of share with your audience some of the things that I've picked up, and hopefully that helps them in their individual businesses. But so for employers, I'm kind of considered to be the bad guy. I am an attorney and I exclusively represent injured workers. I got my start as a workers' compensation attorney, actually working for the big insurance companies. I was a defense attorney. And then after a couple of years of that, I switched and I opened up my own firm. And now I exclusively represent injured workers who are fighting for the different benefits and medical treatment and things like that that they need through California's workers' comp system. And what I've understood now that I've kind of switched sides is there's a lot of misunderstanding that one side thinks about the other that is really not true. And I have this kind of unique perspective because I do understand how both sides of the aisle think. And I use that in my own practice every day.
Got it. Awesome. So I have a couple questions that we can kind of talk about. And one of the questions is, what are the best practices for the employer when an employee reports an injury? What are some of the things, how do you recommend managing that in order for them not to call someone like you?
Exactly. So one of the things I always recommend to like my friends and family that are small business owners is if your employee reports an injury, roll out the red carpet for that person and take them to the doctor. Don't just say, oh, go to the doctor over there. Make sure that the arrangements are made. They either have a ride, or you are taking them, or somebody in their family is taking them to the doctor. You want to treat them like you would want to be treated. So one of the things that happens quite a lot, actually, and my clients will come to me and say, I reported an injury. My employer didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to send me. They told me I had to call workers' comp. Workers' comp told me they didn't know where to go because I didn't have a claim set up. And there's a lot of uncertainty in that first little bit. And injured workers are already feeling like a second-class citizen the minute an injury happens. They're feeling like they've done something to hurt their employer. They've done something to bring down morale. They're costing their employer money. And whether that feeling is true or not true, it really doesn't matter. It's just how they feel in that moment. So they're already very sensitive and in pain and scared and getting the runaround from an insurance company or from an employer who's never had a workers' comp claim, and they don't know where to go. And so that person has a lot of emotions going on. And if the employer is reacting in some sort of way that they perceive to be negative, they become very, very sensitive to that. And those types of situations are why people sometimes will call me right at the very beginning, even though nothing bad has happened, even though workers' comp has not denied anything, or nobody said anything to them. A lot of times they'll call me right away because of how they felt in that moment. And so the best thing to do is send them to a high quality doctor who
Yeah.
can immediately address the injury, get them on a treatment plan to get them better. And you get an employee who's back to work a whole lot sooner that way. And they're not calling me.
Yeah, I had from a employer perspective, what is, we want to roll the red carpet out. We want to treat them, and have empathy for them and really understand what's happening and be sensitive to that. What would be a good approach if you didn't treat it the best way, if you did screw up, like, okay, I should have been more sensitive to that person. What can we do as damage control? And say they haven't got the attorney, or maybe they did. What would you recommend in that situation? Now, I have a client right now that is kind of in limbo with, they've already created a kind of a negative environment, but they want to save it. They want to, rid the culture of having, oh yeah, get her, go see an attorney. He assumes that, he being the owner of the business, he's seeing it like this, like, go to the occupational clinic and the attorney's right next door, or sometimes in the lobby. That's how he's seeing it. And that's not just, I don't think that's true. But that's his perception. And I'm working on that with him. It's not necessarily true. And he's kind of defensive. And I'm kind of creating a crazy story here, but this is weird. This is what's happening with
Yeah.
reality, and it's not good.
It's never too late for somebody to say, hey, maybe I didn't handle that well.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've had a workers' comp claim. I forgot what to do. There's a process I was supposed to follow, and I didn't follow it. I should have done something different. So it's never too late to say that, and that's really going to set really, really well with an employee who's sitting there scared and in pain. Another thing that you said that it's probably causing some of that rift is that it's the industrial clinic. My clients who come to me, and I won't name names, I don't want to get your podcast in trouble here, but who are treating with these industrial clinic chains feel like a number.
Yeah.
They feel like that person doesn't care about them. They may be told to come back in 3 days and see a completely different doctor who knows nothing about their case. And we've seen it time and time again that people will come in with really serious injuries, and the industrial clinic doctors do tend to be very dismissive. And so maybe helping the person find a doctor who's not going to be dismissive. And industrial clinics have their place. So if somebody has a small minor injury, like they slam their finger in a desk drawer and cut it open and need a couple of stitches, that is a great place for somebody to go for a really minor, almost first aid type of situation that just needs a little bit more medical care than a Band-Aid. That's a great place because you can usually get in with, right away. But for somebody who has a more serious injury that's going to require additional follow-up, they are not going to be happy treating in those industrial clinics because they really, truly are a number. And that negative feeling that they get from treating in that industrial clinic is going to carry over into the relationship they have with their employer.
Oh.
And is that fair? No, because it's not the employer who picks those clinics. It's usually the insurance. But it doesn't matter if it's fair. Feelings aren't fair. How that person is feeling is going to affect that employment relationship. And when they're not getting the medical care they need, they are off work longer, they are on modified duties longer, or if the doctor sends them back to full duties before they're ready, you've got an employee who's not performing at their peak because they are still in pain. I love it when my clients are working, but I want them to work under conditions that are going to help them heal faster, not slow them down. So a quick return back to work with those industrial clinics sometimes backfires because it makes an injury worse and it creates that negative environment. And naturally people are going to gossip and people are going to talk, and that will naturally kind of spread that negative attitude around to other people when they have an injury. And that type of culture is inevitable when you have that situation. So my advice for employers, and I know nobody's going to want to hear it, is call your insurance company and help your person get to a higher quality doctor. They're out there, they're on the insurance company network, but they're not those industrial care doctors. Have them go to a different doctor on the network. You will have your employee feeling better and back to work and back to full duties and on your payroll again in a really short amount of time. And then you're not having to replace that person and retrain a brand new person when they don't return back to work. So it's really better for employees or employers, in my opinion, to help get involved in that process as much as your employee feels comfortable with, so that they know you care about them. If I'm hurt and somebody is calling my insurance company saying, hey, do better, I need this person back, they are a valuable member of my team, I know I'm feeling like $1,000,000 and I am feeling like employee of the year because my boss cared about me that much. And it's when an employer gets hit with a workers' comp claim, the natural inclination is to withdraw, because you're like, oh, am I being sued? Am I in trouble? Is my insurance going to go up? Your natural inclination is to suddenly retreat to your own corner, because you're like, I don't want to admit liability. I don't want to admit anything like that. And that naturally is going to create that negative environment that you're talking about. So just trying to fight that natural instinct to withdraw, and instead just try to be a human. Try to treat that person like they are your family, they are your best friend. That is going to get that person back to work and back as a productive member on your team a whole lot faster at the end of the day. And they're not calling me. And those cases, resolve without litigation. It's just like a little blip, and 6 months from now, you don't even remember that it happened.
That is some of the best advice I've ever heard, and it just takes a little bit of effort. We know you small businesses, you wear, 10 different hats, and it's hard to manage, especially when somebody's hurt. We think production is going to go down and this is going to happen and that's going to happen, but we need to look at it long term. Take a few minutes, reach out to that injured person, take them to the clinic, designate somebody to take them to the clinic, be with them, wait with them in the lobby. And this is what is so awesome, what you're providing for us. I never even considered the follow-up care. So that alone, I think, will make a significant impact on the recovery time. Don't send them back to the same, unless it's a high quality doctor, you have a really good relationship with them. But going somebody within the network who maybe can give you a little more care, I said, what a great advice that is.
Thanks.
Really good advice. And it's really comforting to know that if in fact someone does get hurt, or that, hey, my employer is going to take care of me. Look at what they did for Joe over in Machine Shop. He got back right away. He was really happy with the care, the service, and that's going to go a long way. So taking those extra steps is really, really gonna pay off in the long run. But you did mention something that I thought was really cool, having a protocol. So tell me about what employers can do now to we don't want injuries. Injuries are unacceptable. Okay, they're unacceptable. That's the approach ROI takes. But I live in reality, and I live in the understanding that people make mistakes and they get hurt. Now, why they got hurt, that's another topic. But they get hurt, what do? Having a procedure in place, I think, is crucial. So what kind of procedure would you put into place, all the way from injury occurring, going to the clinic, and then managing all of that? Let's say they have restrictions to getting them back to work. Can you kind of give us in broad strokes the process of having a procedure in place and the benefits of that?
Yeah. So I'm a small business owner myself. I own my own firm and I have employees. And when I signed up for my own workers' comp policy, they were like, oh, here you go. And they gave me just an envelope that went in a desk drawer right behind me, and I never looked at it again.
Yeah.
But the other day, I actually did take it out and I looked at it because I was like, well, what does it say? What instructions did my insurance company give me, in the event that somebody files a claim? And the answer was not much. They gave me what's called a DWC-1 claim form. And that's the state form that officially starts a workers' comp claim. So when an employer is aware that somebody has had a workers' comp claim, honestly, even if it's just something kind of minor, the employer should absolutely give that claim form to an employee. Now, it is up to the employee if they want to fill it out, but what happens when the employer gives that claim form to the employee, that starts the statute of limitations running. So somebody can't come in after their statute has ran and say, I would like to now file a workers' comp claim. Like, you started that statute of limitations on that day. But you're also telling this person, hey, if you think this is serious, let's send you to the doctor. Let's do something about it. So you want to start that process right away. And you really should have a conversation with your insurance carrier or maybe your agent about where what clinic should we be sending people to in case there is an emergency, or if it's a true emergency, call 911. They go to the nearest emergency room. Absolutely, workers' comp will figure all that stuff out later. But if somebody does have an injury, do they go to urgent care? Do they go to one of the local industrial care clinics? Is there some other doctor that you've contracted with? Those are conversations that you should be having with your individual insurance companies or maybe your agents or brokers, and have that policy in place. And then, also know how to, train the supervisors. So train supervisors to follow that process. And the process of giving somebody that claim form needs to be done in writing, because if you say, oh, yeah, I totally handed it to them later on, you're not going to remember the date. There's no tracking of it. So follow it up, give it to them in writing, follow it up in an email or some sort of other written form is good practice. And then immediately report it to your insurance company. And I know, that stinks. Everybody's like, oh, it's going to make my premiums go up. Well, maybe, it's going to hit your premiums just like, any other little fender bender that we would have with our car insurance. It's going to increase our premiums. But let me tell you what's really going to hurt your premiums is when your insurance agent realizes, or your insurance company realizes, that you didn't follow this protocol, and now they could have used defenses to deny the claim, but because you didn't do the things you were supposed to, they're stuck accepting a claim that they had a solid defense on, but for you messing that process up. So you want to make sure you're involving your insurance company right from the get-go, because by not involving them, they have affirmative defenses that they could be using, which are admitting like, yes, the injury happened, but we have a defense for it. And they waive those if you don't report things to them right away. So you just want to keep them in the loop. You want to make sure that things are being reported and documented accordingly, so that they can kind of come in right away. And then eventually this person is going to be ready to come back to work. And maybe that means that same day, maybe that means a week from now, maybe that means months from now. All injuries are different. Some injuries, people never miss any time from work, and that's totally normal. And sometimes people need a lot longer to recover. Maybe their injury was really severe. They needed to have a surgery. Now they have to do all their post-op surgery care. And it takes a long time, but you also need to have a plan on how to bring that person back to work. If an employee hands an employer a note that says, I can return in some sort of modified capacity, it triggers obligations from the employer to engage in an interactive, what's called the interactive process, where the employer is required to try to accommodate. An employer cannot just say, nah, hey, come back when you're 100%.
Yeah.
That is a surefire way you're not only getting me involved as a workers' comp attorney, but you're getting sued civilly for disability discrimination. So you never, ever, ever say, come back to work at 100%.
Yeah.
You always have to try to accommodate that person. Now, you don't have to always give the person a job if you don't have a job to give them, but you do need to make sure you're sitting down and you're trying to figure out if there's reasonable accommodations that can be made in that current job to make it work for that person. Is there another position we can move them into? That needs to be made every single time the person is giving you the notices that say, I have a modified work accommodation. And that's for workers' comp, or if somebody just had a car accident or an injury playing basketball on the weekend. I mean, it doesn't matter what their injury is. That accommodation process needs to trigger every single time, or otherwise I'm coming in. Otherwise, civil attorneys are coming in, and that's a whole mess that nobody really wants to get into.
You mentioned other injuries, and when I was working with a very large company, we had several hundred employees. There was not a time when we didn't have at least 5 to 10 employees on personal medical or limited duty. And so should those be managed in the same way as work-related injuries?
That those accommodations, like, you're required as an employer, you are required to try to accommodate every medical accommodation as long as it's reasonable.
Yeah.
And some aren't, right? So for example, if you have a roofing company and, your roofer is told, hey, no climbing ladders and no walking on uneven surfaces. They need to be sitting down all day.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's just not another place that you can put that person. The office positions are all full. There's no one else. You're not required to create a job for this person, but you are required to try. You're required to sit down and talk to the person. It's an interactive process. So you engage with the employee and you try to see if there's some sort of accommodation that can be done. And, at the end of the day, sometimes there is, and you've got a really happy employee on your hands because they're able to work. And sometimes, because also working is full duty, it's full pay. Disability is a fraction. So employees love coming back to work at a modified capacity because they're getting more money that way. Nobody really, honestly, I know the news sometimes makes it look really exciting. Nobody really wants to be at home on disability. It's very boring. There's nobody to talk to. It's very easy to fall into a depression, and you're taking a massive pay cut to do that, but your bills don't cut. So nobody really wants to be on that. But you do want to try to accommodate those disabilities as much as you possibly can within a reasonable degree. Like I said, you're not required to invent jobs for anybody. No employer has that obligation.
So back again, I'll use that big company as a reference. And what they did, and this is when I started working with them, let's say we had an injury and then we couldn't accommodate. They didn't have any kind of job descriptions for them. They didn't really have a method in putting them back to work. So what they would do, again, this was in place when I got there. They would keep them at the clinic watching safety videos all day long. And so rather than working, they were sitting there and I would go in and visit them. Hey, how are you guys doing? And they were watching these safety videos looking like they were going to fall asleep or go crazy. Some of them even left, like just said, I'm not doing this. What are your thoughts on doing that, on sending them out somewhere, or even going to a nonprofit and sorting through clothes or something like that?
If I were advising an employer, 100% no, do not have somebody sit and watch safety videos all day long.
Okay.
They are going to feel like the least valued person of your team. And all they're doing is sitting there on their phone, Googling work comp attorneys, employment attorneys, because now they are feeling very, very targeted. And especially if it's just watch the safety video on repeat, that's a punishment. That is not that is a true punishment. And we're gonna be looking at maybe filing a 132 Labor Code Section 132A action on those types of facts, which now takes it outside of the workers' comp, what workers' comp pays for. And now this is actually a damage that the employer itself would have to pay for. So you don't want to do that. Like that is bad news. Find something productive for this person to do.
Okay.
Or say, we don't have anything. I'm really sorry. We've tried, we've looked. Why don't you just go home? And workers' comp will kick in and pay that person's disability.
Yeah.
But having somebody sit there and just day in and day out watch these like safety videos is mind-numbingly boring. And that's where you are going to have that person who is going to be angry and who is going to sit in the break room and talk to everybody else. And now everybody else is going to be angry for them. And now everybody else is that's that negative culture that we were talking about earlier. That's how that negative culture is propagated. Now, as far as your other part of your question was about the nonprofits, that is starting to get like really popular. There's actually one of the a major trucking company that does that. So because they don't really have a way to modify those jobs.
Whatever you don't, yeah.
Yeah. And so what they've done is they've partnered with like some local charities, that take in donations, and then they have like a shop that they sell everything in, and then the money goes to some sort of like useful charity. And I will tell you that that's allowed for the most part. The work does have to be something that they can do, that is within somebody's work restrictions. And it's pretty easy to make modifications there, because essentially those places are staffed wholly by people who are on some sort of work restriction. So they kind of work around somebody's work restrictions. But I can tell you from talking to so many of my clients who have been in that situation, there's really nothing that makes somebody feel more devalued than that, to go to those kind of places. And so, every once and again, you'll have somebody who's like, oh, I get to do this. Like, I get to give back to my community. And they just naturally have that positive spin. It's just a super optimistic person. So every once in a while, somebody thinks of it as like a positive, but the majority of the time, the person thinks they have me sorting through other people's trash. Like, that's my job now. I had this like really high level job. I was getting paid really well, love my job. And now I'm sitting here sorting through other people's trash. And that starts setting that negative environment that we talked about. And it starts setting like that employee down like a really bad path, and they can kind of spiral with those negative thoughts because they're around other people all day with those negative thoughts. And so it's allowed, it's legally allowed for employers to do that. But I would be kind of cautious about how it's used, because I think sometimes it does tend to backfire and create like a really negative environment. So when that person is released to come back to work, they don't leave that negative attitude back at the charity location. They bring it back with them to the work environment. And then now you're still spreading that negativity. So I would caution people against it. Sometimes just because things are allowed under our law, it doesn't mean that we should be doing them. And that is one of the things, my personal opinion is, that's not good. Try to find some other place to put that person, if at all possible. It stops bigger issues from happening.
I would agree. One of the times I went to, when I discovered that's what this company was doing, I went there and I walked up the stairs and I went into the classroom. They kept them in a classroom, and there was about like 4 or 5 of them, and everybody's head goes like this, right when I walked in. And I could sense something's wrong here. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling I had. And the thing that was happening while I was there is I had a complaint from one of our employees was taking longer breaks and smoking in undesignated areas. And I'm thinking, wow, we're spending time managing these people who aren't even, really, we shouldn't be hearing anything from them, but yet we have to go out and use resources to manage them at this obscure location, which they're already angry. It's a crazy environment. And yeah, it was just a bad situation.
Yeah. I
And
do I do think there's a way to manage modified duties in a way that's successful. And one of the companies that does it really well, and I am going to name somebody now because I'm going to talk positive about them, is actually Disney.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Disney has a dedicated transitional work program where they have found certain activities that they can pull from other jobs and say, okay, for people who have a knee injury and they maybe need to be off of their feet, they can do these tasks. For people who have, a wrist injury because of carpal tunnel, here's some things that they can do. And they've really found a way to try. Now, it doesn't always work perfectly, but they've found a way to try to incorporate that person, give them a job that has value. Like the person can see, I am contributing to the success of my company. My company like respects me and respects the value that I bring to the table.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm still able to work. I'm still able to make my regular wages. And it's not a negative environment there. It with the transitional work, my clients that I talk to who are doing the transitional work there do tend to be happier, with it because it's an actual value add to the company at the end of the day. And they still feel valued and respected and just like an important cast as it is an important cast member as they were prior to the injury. And I think that's huge. And I think that also helps Disney's retention rate. Because at the end of the day, most of my clients who were employed by Disney are going back to work at Disney. Like they want to stay working there because the whole time during their case, they did feel valued. And that doesn't repeat at other employers in the same way.
Wow. That's really good. So how would an employer put together this return to work or really added value positions? Because I'm sure if we send everybody to the warehouse and you sweep floors all day, not so sure if that would be added value in everybody's mind. So what are some of the things that an employer can do for a modified duty position?
That's great. That's a great question. And it really depends on the type of business that it is.
Yeah.
For me, I'm in office. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, Amanda, I had an injury, whether it's work comp or not, I need modifications. It's really easy for me to just modify anybody's current job. Oh, you need to stop typing for so many minutes an hour. No problem. Go do, we have these, go to the scanner and, scan in documents or go do whatever it is you need. Make phone calls during that time period. It's very easy for me to modify pretty much any kind of job that we need. For other places, it may be harder and you're going to have to, sit down and really think through it. Growing up, I grew up in another state, not California, so work comp was like totally different. But my dad and my grandfather owned a sawmill.
Oh wow, high
There
risk.
was, yeah, there was no job really at all that somebody could do if there was some sort of, injury that happened. Maybe they could help out for half a day in the office, but that was kind of all they could do. Well, that was what my grandfather would have people do is like, hey, why don't you come in for a half a day? Help me get out some invoices. Help, it was a small, mom and pop type of shop. But he would have them come in, do something that helped him throughout his day. But I mean, obviously they're not running the heavy machinery at that point. So he would find tasks. And as an owner of a business, you have a million things on your to-do list. Try to find some things that somebody can help you with that on your to-do list that adds value to your day. And that's what he was doing. But at first blush, you would think nobody at a sawmill could ever have modified work. That's heavy lifting. It's really heavy manual labor. But my grandfather was actually able to figure it out.
Hmm.
And if you can figure it out at a sawmill, I think you can figure it out at any business out there, some sort of thing. And it doesn't have to be full time. It could just be a couple of hours a day. And then the person would then collect disability for the remaining time that they're missing. So they worked 4 hours, they would collect wages for that first 4 hours. They would collect disability for the time that they were missing, and they're still coming out ahead financially. And you've got a happy, as an employee or as an employer, you have a happy employee, a positive culture, less turnover, which we all know as a business owners, turnover is horrible. And so, that's really what you're looking for at the end of the day, is that retention factor.
Yeah. One of the challenges I have had over the years when I have put employees back to work with modified duty is ensuring that they stuck within those modifications. And, over the years, I've seen many employees get outside of it, and I would have to we would have to discipline them. I remember in one case, we had to send somebody back home. We just, you were going outside of your restrictions. It was driving a forklift, I believe it was. The employee could not drive the forklift, and we found him multiple times jumping on the lift, because that's where he was in the warehouse, but he was supposed to be doing it, I believe, invoicing or packaging or something like that, something within his modifications. What can we do to make sure that we have a good program, and we manage that transition into that modified duty, and then get them out as quickly as possible back into their normal position? I know you said get a high quality doctor. That is a priority. We got to get somebody we trust. Not some, like you were saying, just somebody that you're just a number. Go to a really good high quality, maybe physical therapist. Go visit the place. Even I visit the clinics. I meet the doctors. I meet the physical therapists. But get somebody really high quality, but also having them fill out a modification duty job description and then have them agree to that. That's what I did, but sometimes they got out of it, and that created a problem. Do you have any advice for that one, for that?
For me, if I were seeing that kind of situation, I would come at it from a place of concern. I would look at it, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm going to have to discipline you because you are going outside of your work restrictions and you're putting us at risk." I would look at it from a place of concern, and I would say, "Hey, I'm concerned about you. Your doctor has said you're not allowed to do the forklift driving, for example. I don't want you to get hurt worse. Like, we need you here. We need you working. Like, you're valued." And and ask what made them want to do that. Did they feel like they didn't have enough support around them and something had to be done, and that's why they did it, because they're trying to be a team player? Maybe, so if that's the case, like, maybe you need to kind of rearrange, like, how, who's doing task, and make sure it's maybe a little bit more clearly defined. But another way that you could approach it is, you could say, "Hey, like, I noticed that you keep jumping on the forklift, but your doctor is saying that you're not supposed to be doing a forklift. Could you maybe, if you feel like you can do it, that's awesome. Could you maybe talk to your doctor and see if they can add that in, that it's okay for you to drive the forklift? I just want to make sure you're okay. It's really important for me to make sure you're okay." And that both of those are coming from like a more positive standpoint versus the negative of, "You didn't do what I said, so now I'm going to punish you." And so, but that more positive spin on it, it goes back to the emotion of that person. It's going to hit that person in a different way than the negative, "You didn't listen and I'm going to discipline you."
Yeah, that's really good advice, because oftentimes, the employer will, "What are you doing? Why aren't you following the modification?" rather than why, what's going on?
Yes.
How are you?
So that person that got the discipline, that's when they're going to call me, because they're going to call and say, "I was on modified work. They knew I couldn't drive a forklift. They weren't sending people over to drive the forklift. I was still expected to do my job. I had to drive the forklift because weren't sending anybody else, and I'd get in trouble if I didn't get my task done at the end of the day. Can you help me? That's the phone call I'm getting.
So I really see a lot of this root cause being just a lack of communication, a lack of
Yeah.
between the employer and the employee. And I see it over and over again. And you're describing the kind of the end of it where it gets really uncomfortable. So yeah,
Yes.
that's definitely something that as a business owner, we need to be very sensitive to our employees. In so far as it ultimately benefits us and the relationship. And the lack of that, even though it's not intentional, and I'm sure it isn't, nobody wants to deal with you know the attorneys and all that. We'd rather keep everything in house. That we know that.
That's so true. You don't want to deal with me. You don't want me
Oh,
on these cases.
I'd love to get a letter from an attorney today. Oh, I love a subpoena or whatever. We want things to work. We don't want any problems. We want to invoice, get paid, and make a good product.
Right?
That's it.
Exactly. And it's these sorts of things, and I can tell you as a business owner myself, it's these sorts of things that take up so much of our emotional bandwidth as a business owner that you're like, I did all of that today and I did nothing that generated revenue for my business. I was
No.
just handling all this other stuff. So these sorts of things, will kind of help you stop handling some of this other stuff and really just kind of focus on earning money. Like that's what we're here at the end of the day as a business owner. We need to earn money to pay for ourselves, pay our employees, and keep our dream of this business alive.
I have several. I don't even know how many. I know it's probably more than 10, so it's a lot more. Business owners that tell me regularly, I spend too much time in HR. HR, I won't go so far as to say it's a non-added value, but it is a non-added value to the bottom line in many cases. It's overhead. And
Mhm.
when you as a boss and owner are spending too much time in the HR's office, putting out fires, something's wrong. We need to identify, and oftentimes when I hear that same person, they're the ones with the high injury rate. Almost all of them. They all have that high injury rate. So it really is a problem of managing your people, having really good emotional intelligence, and being empathetic to your people, and you're not gonna have these problems. So
Right.
you
Yeah.
really
I mean, injuries are going to happen, whether it is something that was like an obvious injury that we all should have known to prevent, or it was just a random, oops, I slipped and I fell down and there was no reason for the injury whatsoever. They happen, but our reaction to those injuries as business owners really does direct how big of a deal that injury can become, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any advice you can give to a small business owner that maybe they're starting up a startup? I have about a handful of startups that I work with, some really exciting stuff that they're doing. Any advice that you would give for them in terms of establishing a really good safety program and ensuring that they don't have it all of the stuff that we talked about happen to them? Is there anything that advice you'd want to give to them?
Yeah, one of the things that seems like such a good idea is to have incentives for like not having injuries. Like, oh, it's been so many days since we've reported an injury. Um, eh, in practice, that seems like, oh, it's such a great thing. We can bond, we can celebrate, we can all be safe together. But what happens is it leads to people hiding an injury because they don't want to be the person who broke they broke the streak, right? Like, oh, if so many days we all get to have a happy hour or something like that. Like they don't want to be the person who broke the streak and ruined it for everybody. So what will happen in those situations is they'll often hide the injury, and then, and if it's what I call like a walk it off injury where, you fall, you hurt your pride, but you didn't really hurt yourself too much. In a few days, you're fine. That doesn't matter. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. But if somebody has something that's like a more serious injury and they feel the pressure to hide it, I'm and I get a hold of that case, I'm going to make an argument that even if my client blew the statute of limitations, they blew it because of that high pressure environment to not ruin your safety thing. So I your insurance company loves you being safe. Absolutely. They love seeing those things in place. But those like so many days since an injury thing do tend to backfire. Maybe find a different way to celebrate that. Instead of it being like a pressure-free thing, you can just, you can celebrate something else that, maybe you can celebrate attendance. So many people were here, and didn't call out sick or something like that. Maybe you can celebrate the more positive things in that way, to show your team that, hey, I love how dedicated you are to the job. But in terms of setting up some sort of safety protocol, absolutely, I would do that, and, do regular trainings, with your supervisors, the people who are in any sort of supervisory role, whether that means they manage one person, they manage a team of 100, it doesn't matter. They do need to know how to properly handle a workers' comp claim when it is reported to them. And the answer isn't, I had that happen to me, go take some Tylenol and you'll be fine, which we hear quite a lot. So you want to, you want to make sure that they are trained to give the claim form, to offer medical care. And if the person declines it, the person declines. If the person's like, hey, I think I'm going to be okay, it's just bothering me for the day. But then, you want them to check in the next day. Hey, how's your shoulder doing? Is it feeling better? Or do you need to take it a little easy today? Can I help you with that? Those sorts of things are really where you want your safety protocols to be focused on. And I personally think that's going to decrease any company's litigated cases. Now, like little first aid cases or cases where somebody doesn't have an attorney are going to happen all the time, but that's going to decrease the times that people call me and we make mountains out of molehills,
I do know that. Now, that's really good advice. What I have done, and I think it's been fairly successful, maybe you can give me some feedback, and I just implemented a program. Matter of fact, I did one yesterday with a client, is we created an incentive program that has 3 different areas that we manage in terms of incentives. We do attendance for safety training, and then we do inspection of the department, and then we do injury. Now, if we have an injury, that affects everybody.
Mhm.
The whole program takes a hit, not just the one department. And so we're not focusing on injuries, we're focusing on the performance of everybody. And then at the end of the quarter, they'll get like a luncheon. And then and so everybody gets rewarded. And if there is an issue, we don't focus so much on the injury, we focus, it is a big part of it, but it's not like, oh man, this so and so ruined it for everybody. It doesn't really have a big impact. You're still going to have a luncheon, but maybe there'll be some other things, like we won't give out gift cards at the luncheon.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's much better because it takes what you're looking to do with that is you want to take the pressure off that one person who like ruined your streak.
I agree. Yeah.
And focus on, hey, when we did the inspections of the workplace, look how awesome we did. Like we had very few infractions. People were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing, cleaning up and, making sure everything looked good. That type of thing is really good. You just don't want to focus on the injuries itself. You don't want to call it out in front of coworkers. That's embarrassing for the person who's injured. And now they feel like they're in the spotlight. You address it as minimally as you can to like the group at large, but you make that person feel supported. I think like some sort of thing like that where you're focusing on other safety criteria is actually brilliant. I love that idea.
Yeah, I had a really, really successful program years ago at a refinery. And we just our team just created this departmental safety program. We had a Stanley Cup and everything that went to each department. And yeah, I think that was pretty successful, we went through we went a whole year without a lost time injury at a refinery. I mean, that was pretty impressive. So, and it took everybody, and it wasn't just me managing it, it was everybody.
Right.
And so getting manager at the top down involved in having a program that everybody can get enrolled in is really going to minimize injuries and workers' comp claims and all the and bad attitudes.
Mhm.
It's funny. I was at this company a few months ago as a consultant. Everything's gone back to what it was before. Yeah, it was kind of shocking to see, sad in a way, because there were some people there that I knew very well, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, man, this place is not the." It
Yeah.
went back to normal.
I like your team-based approach in terms of, hey, these are the metrics that our department is trying to hit in
Yeah,
terms of safety. I really like that. I think that that type of, we're all in this together is a really good and, attitude. And it helps from that one person who had like the injury, it helps them from, to not feel so ostracized at the end of the day.
absolutely. I think that's a really healthy approach to take. There's not like a magic pill that we can all take. We all every facility is going to be different. It's you got different attitudes, you have different cultures. Of course, you have different risks. Working in a refinery versus working in you know, a distribution center, the risks are night and day.
Mhm.
And it's really it needs responsible managers and business owners. So
Yes.
that's what it really comes down to, is being responsible for your business, managing people with empathy and kindness, and taking that extra step when and hopefully never people get hurt.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly. I think you said it perfectly.
I had one last question for you, and I think this will be a good one. This is a good one because I get this every now and again. I'll get a client, hey, we got an employee. I'm pretty sure he didn't get hurt here, but he says he did. What do we do? We send him to the clinic. We're gonna contest it. But what do we do in those situations? I'm sure this never happens to you, right? But what do you think an owner, and in owners, a lot of owners I deal with, they know their employees very well. Most of them, I would say, have known them for decades.
Mhm.
That's the kind of small businesses we deal with.
So one of the things I want to stress, and a lot of people don't understand this. So before I answered that question, I want to kind of
Okay.
kind of give you a little bit of background in the law. So work for something to be considered a workers' comp injury. So that a person could have a pre-existing injury and something in the work environment light it up. Work only has to cause 1%
Oh my.
of the person's injury for
Okay.
them to be eligible for workers' comp. So even if somebody had some sort of prior really serious pre-existing injury, if work has worsened that pre-existing injury, it's work comp. And so that's something that a lot of people don't understand. And so one of the things that we see time and time again is employers saying, well, I know that person had a car accident 6 months ago, and now they're trying to say that it's work comp. Those actually can both be true
Yeah.
simultaneously. They could have had a car accident, and they also could have a worsening of the condition through work comp.
Yeah.
So what I stress to employers is if you feel like somebody is lying or exaggerating their injury in some sort of capacity, it is not your job to figure that out. You are going to get yourself in a whole world of trouble because you are not a private investigator.
Hear that,
And
business owners?
exactly. Do
I
not,
know. They always tell me, I know it's not here.
yeah,
Can't really do much
like
about
they'll try to like, we've seen employee or employers try to do like their own surveillance and like follow people around. you're just going to get yourself in trouble. That stuff is not admissible. If that's coming in on my case, I am fighting tooth and nail because you are not a licensed private investigator and it's not coming in. So nobody's going to get to see it other than you. So what I always suggest to my friends who are business owners is, if you think that is happening, tell your insurance company. They have ways that they can handle that. And it helps to, there's ways that they can fight it. They can hire the proper people to go out and do that video footage. They can hire people to search someone's social media for those posts that you think are red flags. They can do all of that. And what they're doing is admissible in court, and it's something that the doctors are going to be legally able to look at and review as part of it. The stuff that they're doing on their own is not. But getting like so caught up in something like that, where you're like, oh, this person is really lying. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources, and it takes that precious energy that you need to have to run your business. You're diverting that energy somewhere else, and you're not making a lick of difference at the end of the day. And so give anything that you think is a red flag to your insurance carrier, and they're going to follow up on it. And just because they don't see things the same way that you do, they have a higher level of understanding of the law. So for example, if you tell them, no, it was that car accident from, now they're trying to say, it's a work comp claim. They're going to do their job. They're going to be getting the records from that car accident. They're going to be sending it to the appropriate doctors to review in the workers' comp claim. And a medical doctor is going to determine what's really work comp and what is not. And then a judge is going to determine what is really part of the work comp claim and what is not. It's not for us as non-medical professionals to make a determination of what is work comp and what is not. And when clients come to me and say, I had this prior injury like a few years ago, and then something happened at work, and now it is so much worse, I explain to them that process where it's a very, very high level medical determination where a doctor is going to go in and look at their old MRIs, their old x-rays, their new MRIs, their new x-rays, and kind of figure out what was pre-existing and what, if anything at all, is new. That's for somebody who is on a higher pay grade than me and the business owner to get figured out. So just send all of that stuff over, and do not waste your emotional capacity and your bandwidth that you have on anything like that. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not helping the case at all. It's just creating this like negativity in your own mind that you got other things to stress about. Let the people who you paid your insurance premium to, let them handle that. That's their job.
Wow, great advice. I really, really think that this interview has been super, super beneficial for me, and I'm certain it's going to be beneficial for business owners. So I'm excited to get feedback from those that are able to watch this. I would love to have you back again, and I'm sure based on feedback we can get some good insight as to what path we'll go in terms of the questions, because there's so many questions that we have. I get questions often, and you've dealt with the big ones, but I'm sure there's some others out there that we can definitely communicate and get some really good answers to. So where are you located, and where's your business at, and how can people reach you?
Yeah, my office is Invictus Law, and we are based out of Orange, California, here in Orange County. And if people wanted to reach me, they could call. Our office number is 949-287-5711. And although I don't do any representation of employers, if they are looking for an attorney, I can kind of get them pointed in the right direction and get them to some high quality, attorneys that can help them. But for the majority of the time, I want to stress to employers, you do not need to hire your own attorney on a workers' comp claim. That's part of what you paid your insurance premium for, and the insurance carrier will hire for you. However, I do see employers sometimes get swindled and have an attorney that they're paying, I don't even know how much money to represent them, and that person does nothing. So, so I can't stress that enough. Like, don't it's not necessary. That attorney is not adding any sort of value to the case. If
Great
anything,
advice,
they just
yeah.
delay resolution because now it's like another person that you got to run things by who doesn't really have any sort of say so, and they don't save any money. They don't make the case suddenly like, cheaper for the insurance company, and it's just running up a bill for the employer. So don't hire separate counsel. It's totally unnecessary.
That is some really good advice. So yeah, I'm sure you hear that, business owners. I'm sure most of you have your own personal attorney. You probably don't need to go down that path. So
I will add a caveat. There are a few things that your insurance doesn't cover as part of the workers' comp claim, and they will tell you, this is happening on this claim. We don't insure you, so you should get an attorney. Otherwise, you're fine. There's just like one or two little things. Mm-hmm.
okay. Well, awesome. I really appreciate your time here, Amanda, and I hope to connect soon. And I wish you the best, and thank you very much.